The first time I saw the Wallaby was in a stock room, like receiving the goods, and then opening up the first box. You can imagine what a Wallaby looks like to a 13-year-old kid for the first time. It looks so different.
But seeing them within the hip-hop culture as a classy alternative.
Blue leather V-Goose with the blue leather pants on with the beige Wallaby Clarks on. Coming to school, walking to the school bus like this, like, yo, we gonna them up.
Here comes this shoe that just changed the game.
Thankful to Ghostface and the Wu for taking it there with the Wallows. Now we got all kind of Wallows out. It's beautiful.
Wu brought the Wallies to the hood.
I had greats that come before me that was wearing them, but once I let it be no.
This is Clark's in New York.
Right, here we go. So we're going to reference exactly what it is that you guys just saw in a couple minutes. But the whole theme of this panel is the authenticity of a brand and, in general, how people own your brand. And as a marketer, you often aren't the one who owns it. And that's what Clark's has been around, all about since it's been around. I'm Joe Maglio. I'm the CEO of McKinney. We're a creative and media agency. We work with a lot of brands across different categories, including in footwear. And we've always admired the Clark's brand and what it stands for in culture. And it's just getting really interesting with some of the work that's been happening recently. I'm going to let Tara and James quickly introduce themselves. Some of you guys have seen them already, but there's some new faces out there. And then we'll let Free give a little bit of his background, and then we'll get into it.
Hello, everybody. Check. You can hear me? Okay. Tara McRae again. Very nice to meet all of you. Chief Marketing and Digital Officer over at Clark's. We probably should have tested.
One. Hello.
They can't understand you anyway.
Yeah, cool. You can't understand me. I'm James. I am Global Head of Marketing for Clark's Originals. So look after a lot of the cool stuff and the campaigns and collaborations and, all that type of stuff.
That's great. Peace to everybody. My name is Richardson. I'm Creative Director for Compound, which is a creative agency, and we also own an art gallery that's moving to Red Hook, Brooklyn.
Thank you, guys. So first, just a question for Tara. The video we just saw, right, a little bit of a 1-minute teaser for something that's launching publicly next week. Tell us a little bit about what we just saw and why New York and Clark's.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, you just saw a tease video, a 1-minute clip of a long-form piece of content that we shot to tell the story of Clark's in New York. I mean, ultimately, as I mentioned yesterday, we're storytellers. And I think it was my new best friend from ESPN, I don't know if he's still here, Mecca. Hey, we met in the elevator, a great guy. You mentioned in the last panel or 2 panels ago about the multiple layers of marketing, which I completely agree with. And this one for us was about the brand storytelling. And, when we look at, James and I sat down probably about maybe two or 3 years ago. And as we started to map out how we wanted to storytell our brand around our core icons of the desert boot and the wallaby and the desert trek, how do we go about doing that? Instead of us telling it, the story to the consumers, why don't we go to these amazing cultures that put these shoes on the map? You think about Clark's in Jamaica, which I talked a little bit about yesterday. We started with that storytelling. Who better, what community or culture better to talk about Clark's and the desert boot and to tell that story better than Jamaica? And when you think about the wallaby and where the wallaby came from, it really was put on the map through hip-hop music and New York back when I was a young kid, and we wanted to tell that story, but we needed to make sure that we told it the right way with the people that put it on the map. So that's where the concept came from, and we are launching it. We have a global press event tomorrow night to launch the entire film, but we didn't want to come here and talk about it without sharing something, so you did get to see a sneak peek of it.
And James, in terms of pulling that together, finding not only the right stories to tell, but more importantly, the person to kind of direct it and steer the creative part of that whole piece of content, what kind of led you to Free, and what was that process like in terms of looking for somebody who could authentically tell the story of such an authentic brand?
As Sarah mentioned, so we've mapped out quite a few projects. This is obviously the current one and our personal favorites. But like when we did Jamaica, myself, Lewis Clark, our creative lead, Emily on my team, worked really, really hard to find, like, we had a whole Jamaican crew, Jamaican director, Jamaican sound, everybody, because we know the stories. I'm lucky I grew up in Somerset, where Clark's is in England. I've seen all the different peoples coming into our tiny little town in the Shire, as we call it, these incredible people adopting the brand in their different ways. So when we did Jamaica, we did it like that. We got other projects that I realize I shouldn't talk about in the future, where we'll work with different people. But when we wanted to do New York, we literally just do the hard yards ourselves, looking at content that we love from people based in New York. It was Lewis, our guy, our creative lead, who found Free, and we had like 3-4 calls set up with different people, all from New York. Like, we were like, we know this story. I'm like a kid of the 90s. I love Woo and all those type of things, even though I'm like a little kid from England, but we do. But we were like, we need the right people. We had, I think, Free and the guys from Compound were the first or second call. I'm super impulsive. I like met him like 30 seconds into it. I was like, this is the guy. Emily was saying, calm down. We need to speak to the other people. It's respectful. But I was like, these are the people. This is it. This is the guy. And I think, yeah, some things are just meant to be. And yeah, hand over to the main man, but yeah, it's been sick.
Yeah, and I think too, just to add on to that, and for real, I think it was 30 seconds into it, is that he was like, this is the guy, and I trust James. And I think it was about 30 seconds into meeting Free and Liza and the crew over there, it is so important that you find a partner that you can trust. I'm handing the brand over to tell that story, and I cannot tell you enough how important it is to find the right partner that has a deep passion. It's hard to have a deeper passion for the brand than James, but a deep passion for the brand that you can trust to tell that story, and that will do it justice and will do it the right way. And I will say, we found that instantly. When you find these good people and partners, they're the ones that you want to move forward with. So right off the bat, we all knew that this was the guy to do that.
Yeah, and it's as everyone will see next week when you see the film, there's nobody who could have told that story any better. And I understand what you're saying about in 30 seconds knowing Free was the right person, because I met him on Monday and I asked him for a job in about 30 seconds. But Free, flipping it over to you, what is it about Clark's, and again, back to the idea that Clark's really is an authentic brand. It's a brand that is part of culture in many ways organically, which is what the story will tell in the film. What was it for you that really interested you in this project and the brand itself?
For me, I grew up on Clark's, starting from the days of when sneaker culture was running hip-hop. It's like Clark's was the only shoe brand, and then Timberland was the boot brand. What Clark's did, and it started with, Dana. There was a couple American rappers like Dana Dane, but Slick Rick came from overseas in London, and he kind of brought that shoe over, and it was a great alternative shoe. And just the name alone, my brand is named Compound, so it's basically about things coming together, to make a product, a feeling, or a situation. But then Clark's name is Originals, so a lot of I looked at their brand and was like, okay, they always have been doing things original, and also being able to see the Jamaica documentary before I got this call was like, wow, I hope they do New York. So that was like, everything that they ever done, it was never a moment of them clout chasing from a brand perspective. And they sit in an original space, to be able to sit amongst sneaker giants, even like partnering with New Balance here this week. This is, to me, never been done. It's to see a shoe brand and a leading sneaker brand come together for this panel and for product and for storytelling is what made me want to be able to join Clark's on his mission and also do the documentary.
And what was it like to work on the documentary? I mean, I think you probably had some connections with some of the people who are in it, right? So,
Yep.
So some people that you're familiar with. Were there any other people you had spoken to, reached out to, that for you was the first time meeting anybody, or was it generally, because you're so ingrained in the culture, people that you're familiar with?
Well, I think when the call first came, and Clark's has great partnerships with their ambassadors and their relationships. So they had, some of the guys they already have, the Raheem Sterlings, the Ronnie Fikes, just the history. But, I always say that when a company or a brand bring me in, I'm only there to be a magnifying glass to make their vision bigger. So, the people that they had from just influencers and then retailers, in their collabs. So I just wanted to pick other people that could help storytell. And of course, one of the biggest brands is Wu-Tang. That is a big part of theirs. But, even going back before James and Tara, both, Futura was doing collaborations when he was in Japan with Nigo, with Bape. So that was just also researching, like, who are the people I know that also can do this timeline? Because they didn't say, let's do a documentary for the current. They said the history of New York. So I had to go back from people I know and also people that just had a history with Clark's before all three of us.
Very cool. And you mentioned something about this panel and everybody who's coming together here this week, New Balance plus Clark's kind of leading the charge here. So Tara, I'm curious, we talked a little bit about earlier in the week, shoe culture versus just sneaker culture. Can you just talk a little bit about your perspective on that? Because you often hear sneaker culture as something that's easy to mention, but it's truly shoe culture in general, which is why these two brands can kind of come together on these stages, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, too, is like, as I said it, I was a broken record. My team knows this. It's all about the consumer. You know, and being really, really consumer-centric. And what I love about the brand of Clark's and why I'm at the brand of Clark's and why I came back to the brand is there's no other brand like us that can play in this space. And we talked about this, Free, many, many times. You know, we can play in the sneaker game with all the sneaker brands, and because we're different than them. And we can also play on the shoe side, like because of the history and the consumer and how the consumer adopted our brand into that space. And that's why we wanted to be able to tell these rich stories of that. And I think for us, like, yes, there are brands that are non-athletic brands that can do some of the stuff we do, but not like Clark's can do it. And I think that's what's really, really unique and exciting about us. And that's why we can partner with somebody like amazing New Balance on the Raheem Sterling piece. Because if you look at the consumer and the experience that both brands have with that, it just obviously comes together.
And James, kind of pulling back a little, you had mentioned the Jamaica film as well, and obviously being based in the UK, you're taking a global look at the brand and how it's authentically linked to other cultures around the world. Are there big differences when you look at a Jamaica story versus a New York story versus a UK story? How do you look at how the brand is authentic but in its own way based on who the person you're speaking to is in terms of where they're based?
Yeah, I think, these guys, my team, and Tara, and even now Free has heard me talk about Clark's and Clark's Originals endlessly and forever. But I think the amazing thing is, I think it's a 200-year-old brand that has never sought out any particular community. Yep. It is a shoe, to be honest, they're weird, ugly, somewhat shoes that were always different though. I think it's being in this bubble, the Shire, as I said, we call it in Somerset, it's like for 200 years before the internet and all these things, you just have these crazy, family making shoes the right way, how they saw it, and then it's been adopted. And it's not just be like by certain cultures, it's be like, Katara knows because I pitch in ideas all the time internally, but there's huge, David Bowie wore Wallabies consistently for 3 years in the 1970s. There's big archive imagery of that. The guys I was talking outside, there's huge connection to the guys in Tokyo. Nigo is a great example, but all the guys, going back to the sort of early 90s, late 80s, finding out these vintage pieces of Clark's, they style it a different way. Then you've got the Manchester scene, Liam Gallagher, Richard Ashcroft from The Verve. I showed Tara the song earlier. It came on the radio, and I was like, he's wearing Wallabies in this track. He walks down the street. It's like seeing all these people, and then especially for me, like I said, grew up in this tiny place in Somerset, but my mum's from New York, so I was seeing the coolest guys in the world wearing Wallabies over when I was spending time with my family in New York. And then you're in Somerset going to Glastonbury Festival. You're seeing Liam Gallagher, Richard Ashcroft, Damon Albarn, Britpop era, which was big in my day. All these different people are taking it in different ways. And one of the first cool projects we did was with street artist, an artist, D-Face, and he did a panel a bit like this, and he said, you'll never find another brand that can mix Stone Roses and Wu-Tang. And that really stuck with me, I knew it, but it was just quite eloquent, and I was like, that's what I think is the exciting thing about this brand. It's not one thing or another, and it's not just trying to adopt some cultures. The cultures have adopted us. We just had never, which I love about Clark's, although we are doing it a bit now, never decided to tell those stories. Free sometimes said to me, what's made the big decision? Honestly, it's a small group of people led by Tara.
And it's tell those stories and give back to the community. That was really important to us. Like when we told the Jamaica story, it was doing it the right way, but also giving back to the community. We're doing that with all of the stories that we're telling. And I think, as James mentioned, is we haven't, these different cultures have adopted the brand, and over years, it hasn't been something that I can say we've been really brilliant marketers, we've been brilliant product makers, brilliant marketers, but now to be able to tell that story in a relevant manner.
And so Free, obviously Clark's is just one of the brands, obviously the most important brand you work with, of course.
Definitely, right, Free?
Totally, only brand I work with.
Yeah. But tell us a little bit more about, again, this idea of authenticity, how a culture adopting a brand is different than a brand trying to market to a culture. When you, at Compound, when you look at, just the broader sphere of brands and the many projects that come your way, what kind of stands out? What are you looking for from the brands? And are there any things recently that you've done that you want to kind of throw out there that kind of fit in that similar mold?
I think, we always have these marketing terms. We all hear these words. We use it in every PowerPoint presentation. And everybody, it is a term, content is king. But I think before content is story. Content is basically a story. And it's what brands, want to tell their real story, That's the one thing. Even yesterday, I was telling Tara, when she started her presentation, it was a picture of the two brothers. And no matter, they go all the way up to Raheem Sterling, but they still started the story with the brothers and tell you the story. And I think for me, it's a lot of brands just jumping out just to make money or find your favorite celebrity who has the most Instagram followers, who has the best numbers. And they don't want to tell a story. They want to tell a story just to, make money. And for me, I look at brands and do you want to tell your authentic story? And that's what really attracts me. And then once I know they want to tell an authentic, truthful story, I would love to create with them.
And speaking of brands, and we've heard in some of the panels yesterday and today how individuals can be brands, obviously. Like Joe in the previous panel, you're a brand unto yourself. Tell us a little about kind of your brand. Talk about the hat you're wearing there. Don't talk about the Nets in the playoffs, please.
We won't talk about that. I think for me, it is important. Like Joe Fresh Goods, his name describes who he is. For me, my name is Set Free. It's a feeling that I think we all want to be. We all want to have freedom. We all want to be free. And I like to just try to put that in all my work, when I do a product. This Clark's project, it was a great feeling of freedom. Even from them as the brand, they let me be free. They didn't ask too many questions on who I was interviewing. They didn't ask for interview questions. They didn't ask for locations. They hired me and let me be free to do my job. And, I think, you have to live by your brand. You have to live by your name of your brand, whatever your brand is. Even New Balance, I always looked at that name as they're always going to start over and balance the game. I always thought that name of the brand was great. So that's very important to me. And the 7 represents, for me, it represents God. A lot of people ask me who's my favorite artist, and I always say God is my favorite artist. He created the world in 6 days, and on the 7th day he rest. And I started it for me and just my friends, and it took a life of its own. And next thing you know, a lot of the athletes from the Carmelo Anthonys and the Kevin Durants and the Kyle Lowrys, the Tim Anderson on the Chicago White Sox, started wearing the hat just because it was something I was wearing. And then it just turned into its own life. But once spirituality for me is really big. And some people got gambling problems. They wear the hat, Some people lucky number 7. But, for me, it's I just really try to be true to myself. And a lot of things, when you stay true to yourself and be organic, magic just happens.
And there were a lot of pictures on social today or last night of KD wearing the hat, which was a nice plug for Compound because you saw the logo on the side.
Totally.
So just tell us a little bit more about Compound, not necessarily the creative agency part of it, but the other component, the museum-like aspect to it, the art gallery aspect to it.
Yeah, it started as a creative studio where we had a music recording studio. A lot of people came and did graphics and just did, it was I call it creative sparring. It's like being able to lock people in a room and just have fun with throwing ideas back and forth with each other. And growing up, I felt like the creative industry was always separated. I grew up in the music industry, so this studio was on this side of town in New York, the music studio. But then the photography studio was all the way on this side of town. Then the people that did the graphics was always over here. So I said, I want to create a space where everybody can work in one place. And that was where the creative studio came. And I always decorated it with my toys and art, and a lot of people always came and was like, it's a beautiful place, it's vibrant, it's colorful to work at, you should start a museum. And that's where the art gallery came in. And we did the art gallery 2017 in the Bronx, and we had to close it due to the pandemic, but we're relocating it in Red Hook, Brooklyn, literally probably within a month. But, you know, for me, art is everything. You know, we forget about how all things start, but it starts from art. When you look at a building, you call it a building, but it was really a sketch. You look at a car, it started from a drawing. You know, anything fashion, from sneakers to shoes, it's all drawn first, but words have replaced that. It all started from art. So, you know, the gallery for us was to be able to celebrate art in all mediums, from fashion, music, photography, whatever that is. But, you know, we just want to create a space that celebrates the artist in any medium.
Thank you for that. And we're going to kind of touch on something else that's coming up for you in a second. But for Clark specifically, what's next? I know James almost leaked a couple of the new...
James leaks everything.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I don't know who he was talking to last night in the suite after a few drinks, but hopefully he hasn't leaked too much.
But generally, what are you guys looking at next? I'm really looking forward to seeing the New York film next week. Are we seeing more kind of geography-based, pieces of content, or what are you looking to do down the road?
Yeah, so last year, as I mentioned, was Clarkson, Jamaica, which was absolutely fantastic. Yes, the awards part of it's cool, but the best part of it was the response from the community. Unbelievable. We launched a product line with it, which we had never done before. We had never done a specific Clarkson Jamaica pack, and we thought it would do well. It sold out in 48 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, everybody was yelling at each other, pointing finger, you didn't buy enough, you didn't do this. And I was like, this is a good problem to have. Really, really fantastic. And then, so obviously we're following it up as we're continuing to tell all the amazing subculture. So we're starting to tell, obviously, Clarkson, New York, as you mentioned. Yes, there are other groups, geographies there, but we don't like to be prescriptive, so we may go in a different direction, but it will all be rooted in the rich storytelling. And I will say just one thing I want to follow up on what Free said, is we didn't needle him at all. Like, we gave him the freedom to create, and that comes from trust. Because I wouldn't, and that's when you know you have the right partner. I was on set with these guys, and I was just following them around because I was excited to see what they were doing. I wasn't in their business. I gave them the space to create, trusted them absolutely with our brand, which is huge. And I will say, a lot of people are asking me, especially last night, how do you know you have the right partners in doing that? You can trust them because you're co-creating something together. And he's pushed back on stuff we wanted to do. Respectfully, he's pushed back and said, no, I need to do this. And it's like, this guy's name's on it too. Absolutely. This is co-creation that we're doing together.
And with the film that's coming out next week, is there going to be a director's cut of sorts so we can?
Oh, geez, somebody did leak. I think I leaked that to you. No, I think we leaked that earlier. Yeah, that's Free. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, you know what it was? And I knew it from the beginning. I just knew that, we're in this world of TikTok, 15-second content, 30, 60, 90, but true storytelling needs time. And if the story's interesting enough, you're going to get the viewer. And when we were just talking about the people in it, I was like, just Wu-Tang alone, and we got Ghost and Raekwon. They need 10 minutes alone, just them two. So, we got Futura, we have Ronnie Fieg. It's just... We was like, we haven't still agreed on a time, but we know we need a longer
unlimited.
That's awesome. So switching gears away from Clark's for a second, because I do have to, I want to give you a good plug, especially if Emeka's still in the audience here from ESPN. So back in the day, you started the And One mixtapes, one of the biggest drivers of culture at the time, and I'll let you say what's coming up at the end of the month. But all right, I'll say it. So, because I'm just sitting up here as a fan at this point. So there's the next ESPN 30 for 30. It was announced this week. Will be around the And One mixtapes and its impact on culture and the cross sections. Yeah. And the cross sections of music and sports and everything that we've all been talking about this week. So do you want to just give a teaser on that and your involvement in creating the 30 for 30?
Yeah, I think it's probably one of my greatest projects. The name of the 30 for 30 is going to be called The Greatest Mixtape Ever. I wanted to make hip-hop mad at me for like one little bit. So, but yeah, I got a chance. At first I was brought on as the EP executive producer, and Chris Robinson, who was my mentor, who taught me the film industry, did the movie ATL. He's doing LeBron's biopic right now. He gave me the chance to co-direct the film with him, so I'm super excited about that. And it's going to talk about the history. I started the N1 mixtape in 1990. I started working on it in 1997. A small copy of it came out on a styrofoam tape at first as a test launch, and then the main ones came out in 1999. So we're going to touch on the years of how the mixtape came together, us being one of the N1 being one of the first companies to sign streetball players in 1999, and just how the mixtapes, changed the face of basketball and hip hop. I remember when we first did it. I remember coming to Boston, and Boston was like one of the latest places that played hip hop in the arena. Like the organ was still played. But then, after the N1 mixtapes, like arenas started playing hip hop in the arenas. Super happy about it. I mean, it has A-listers from Snoop to Fat Joe to Common, Kyrie Irving, Dr. J, Isaiah Thomas, all the original N1 street ball players, and just a host of others. And it's actually coming May 31st at 8 o'clock on ESPN. And ESPN Plus for all up there.
So a lot of good stuff to look forward to. The Clarkson, New York film next week, the director's cut after that, and then
totally.
I think we just committed to it right now.
Sorry, I just really want it, so I'm really pushing for it. And then the 30 for 30 at the end of the month. So thank you guys so much. This was really awesome. I don't know if we have any time for questions. Great.
Cool. Somebody want to take them?
Any questions? There has to be a
Yeah.
All right.
Go first.
Hello, mate. I think honestly, you know us well. We are exactly as we say we are, like little dweebs from Somerset, my little crew. But the internet's a wonderful thing, and we just really look deep, like the same as we do with Jamaica, and we've got other projects that we're working on in other places, but we just really do the research and do the hard yards. And then I think, honestly, as well, with Free, just being completely transparent, it was easier, because although I didn't know him as a name, within 2 seconds you realize he's a name, and Tara knows. I just found out as soon as I'm in someone. These guys know, Kyle knows, I talk about him 24/7. I was like, this guy. But it's like, for him, for Free, it was more obvious. And then I said earlier that when we did Jamaica, we actually worked with somebody who directed music videos, but we just loved the aesthetic. And we had, honestly as well, we had a stronger idea. The Jamaican thing's so deep, a lot of Jamaican influence within the UK, so we were able to ask people that we knew also from those communities who are English but of Jamaican descent, like, is this the right person and things like that. So yeah, I think as a little crew we do the hard yards to make sure we're picking the right person. We take a long time. We probably, like I said, once we know, but we had like 4 or 5 of those calls set up to try and speak to people. If it wasn't the pandemic or when budgets allow, we prefer to get over there and meet people face to face, and because we're putting the hands of this brand that we deeply love in other people's hands. So once, like Tara said though, once we agree, once we know we got the right person, that's when we put all the hard yards in. Then obviously we're co-creating, but then we're handing it over. So it's like making sure you gotta feel really comfortable.
And the other thing too is that what we find is some of the best ones that come to us teach us about our brand. Like when I sit with Ronnie Feig, I love sitting with him. Well, no, because he briefs in 32 things, but I learn something about Clark's every single time I sit down with him. Stuff I didn't know. Same thing with this guy here. Like, that's when when they're teaching you something about your brand, because that passion runs deep, that they have that knowledge of it.
Amazing. I love that. passion, knowledge, trust, all of the great things. Any more questions? Chris?
So I would say that there's a lot of macro influencers out there, but there are only a handful of people, I would say, in the country or in the world who influence the influencers. And I would say the guy right there with the number 7 hat, the gambling problem.
Yep.
That's one of them. So what do you think it is about you, your vision, your mission, enables you to influence all of the influencers out there?
I think I started everybody's human. I think about everybody goes to the bathroom the same way. That erases your favorite superstar and brings them down to your level. And, you know, like one thing is like, I was listening to Joe Freshgoods earlier talking about him and Kawhi. I kind of, when it's athletes, it's actors, it's everybody, I want to talk to you about what everybody else is not talking to you about. So, you know, like, if I had to have a conversation with you, I'm going to ask you how your family got started before we talk about New Balance. And I think reducing everybody to a humanistic level first opens a relationship way beyond the brand, the money, and everything, you know. I mean, think about how many text messages everybody get in this room that doesn't greet you first before, you know, whatever, you know, did you send that PowerPoint off of, you know. And I think with me, with the influencers from levels of athletes and whatever across the gambit, I just try to treat everybody human first, and then we could build on everything else later.
Awesome. All right, perfect. So thank you guys so much. That was fantastic, and thanks for everything you're doing. We're excited for Monday and all of the new drops, so thank you guys so much. And we're
Thank you.
excited.
Thank you.